Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Her Story, brought to you by Chamber Fayetteville. I'm Angela Belford, your host, and today I'm joined by Shannon Hendrix. Shannon, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, so glad to be here. My name is Shannon Hendrix, and I've been in Northwest Arkansas for about 5 years now. I currently work at Surgical Form, and I'm their vice president of operations. I'm married, and I have a 14-year-old son who keeps us really busy between school and sports and a full social calendar.
Indeed. And you
Yeah.
said Vice President of Operations for Serve to Perform.
Serve to Perform. So if you're
Tell-
not familiar with them, they are based in Fayetteville. And so we specialize in leadership development. So what our taglines are connect, serve, and grow. So we love connecting people, encouraging them to serve in the community while growing just different leadership skills. And we really focus on all levels from the individual contributor all the way up to senior vice presidents and CEOs of companies. We do executive coaching, leadership development, and really encourage people to serve within the community. So it's passionate work and really aligns with who I am as a person. And so just excited to serve with that team.
That's fantastic. So take us back to the beginning. Where did your career start, and did you have any idea that it would lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, so short answer, no. My degree is actually in nutrition. So I graduated from the University of Central Arkansas in Conway with my degree in nutrition. And that was actually inspired by my aunt who was a dietitian. And, I started out working as a nutritionist, but knew in the back of my mind, like, that's not what I wanted to do forever. And so quickly after a year or so working just as a clinical dietitian, I moved into a role actually working in sales, so food service sales. So
Hmm.
totally changed from dietetics to working in sales, and actually that led to me landing a role in management. So probably about it's probably almost 20 years ago, I started my path kind of led me into management. And I took my first leadership role in my early 30s and honestly not knowing what the heck I was doing. But, I was presented an opportunity and just kind of rolled with it. And fast forward to 2 years ago, decided to step away from corporate America and just made the conscious decision to spend more time with my family. As I mentioned, I have a son who's very active in travel sports and just wanted to be more present for him and my family, and so made a decision to kind of step away, and was actually connected with Search Perform through a friend who had actually volunteered at some other events, and she thought I would be a great fit for the organization. And so, for me, I haven't always had like that laid out plan of what I'm going to do next. I've always, just kind of kept my options open. And so far that's served me well.
That's fantastic. I'm curious, if you were to sit down with a young woman that is early in her career, maybe it's the first day, what advice would you have for her?
You know, I would say the first thing is to stay curious, ask questions. One of the things, so throughout my years, I've mentored several students, mainly in kind of the dietetics arena. I've served as a preceptor for several of the dietetic programs in the area. And one thing that I always would tell students is keep an open mind. You
Mm.
never know what opportunity may lead to the next. And, I think it's okay to have a plan, right? Like you see yourself climbing the ladder and that's okay. But I think also don't be derailed if an opportunity comes out of the blue that it might not have been on your radar or part of your plan. Like, be open to that. I would say also I'm not gonna say how old I am, but my current self, thinking about when I first started in my career, my advice also would be find your voice early. I didn't feel like I
Mm.
did that as a young professional entering a role. I think, you're scared, you're not sure what to do, and in the back of my mind, I thought, "Oh, I can't stand up for myself or for what's right." And I think just encouraging people to have that voice and not be afraid to speak up. I think one of the I guess, hardest lessons I've learned just thinking about that too is just always being true to yourself and who you are and not losing that. I think it's
Mm.
easy, um, as you climb a ladder to think, "Oh, I need to latch onto this person," or "I need to do this or that to impress this person." And I think just staying true to who you are, that's something I feel like that has also served me well.
That's fantastic. You mentioned that you wanted to be more present with your son.
Mhm.
I'm curious if in this process you've been able to develop any work life balance hacks or something that has really worked for you and kind of how you would advise us to be more present.
Yeah, that's that's interesting because when I stepped away, from corporate America, my husband said to me, he's like, "The money's not worth it. Like, I need you to take care of you and your mental health."
Mm,
And he said, "I don't want you to even think about a job for at least 3 to 4 months." And, I've always worked, like, since I was a teenager, so stepping back, like, that was a huge transition for me, and I was like, "What am I gonna do?" So, I love to play tennis, so I started playing tennis every day, and also started just reconnecting with people that I haven't seen in a long time or didn't
mm,
feel like I had the time to make for those types of things. So started having coffee and lunch dates and just reconnecting with people. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of re energized me. I started watching Netflix shows, which I never did before, started reading books. And so I didn't work for about 8 months, which was really good again for my mental health and just time with my family. But then as I started doing some consulting work and kind of easing back in, I didn't want to let go of my tennis and I started Pilates. And, so if you think about work life balance, some people say there's no such thing. I think there is, but you have to be intentional about it. And so, one, I schedule my Pilates time every week. Like I previously, I was not that person, like, that scheduled exercise. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna try to, go 2 to 3 days this week," and so now I schedule my Pilates class, I put them on my calendar, um, I schedule tennis. I play in a league, so those are pretty scheduled, but I try to do cardio tennis 2 or 3 days a week, and I put that on the calendar. My husband knows that's what I'm gonna do, and my son plays baseball, and some of the baseball moms are big into reading, and so they've inspired me to start reading, and so we have our Goodreads app and we compare what books we're reading. And so that motivates me to like keep that going. So I've just been very intentional some of those things. I like to say, like, think about what brings you joy. And I tell that to people. That's one of the things after I left corporate America that I decided like there's just certain things that I'm from a professional standpoint, like that I'm not gonna put up with, or I've just decided this is, I talk about start to perform and that aligns with who I am. And same for like my activities that I love. Like I'm going to do things that bring me joy. And, I think you get to a certain point of your life where that's what you look forward to and you really are intentional with your relationships and the things that you do and how you spend your time. And so that's really helped me to kind of, I think, organize my life in a way that's
mm.
way more fulfilling than it was before.
I love that. That brings to mind there's a YouTube video, and I've used it and seen it in Sunday school where they have this glass and they put in the sand and then they try to put rocks in
Yeah.
after they've put the sand in. And there's no room for the rocks. But if
Yeah.
you put in the big rocks, then you can put in small rocks. Then you
Hmm.
can put in sand, and then it will even hold water after that. And so it's like there's room for everything, but you just got to make sure that you put the big important things first. And I find that if I pursue joy, like
Mhm.
you've mentioned, it gives me so much more energy for the rest of my life.
Oh my
Whereas if
gosh,
I don't
yes.
ever do anything that gives me joy, then I just like my batteries are drained and I don't. And so, like, I'm with you, I make time for friends. And it's like, how do you have time to do that? I'm like, I don't have time not to because I
Oh
will
my
just
gosh.
drain my battery if I don't ever have that extra, engagement
Yes.
in deeper relationships.
I know probably 2 weeks after or maybe 3 after I left my corporate America job, my husband looked at me and he said, "I'm glad I have my Shannon back." He said, "I don't think
Oh.
you realized, just how stressed out you were, and to your point, like, not taking time for the things that brought me joy." and just how much that drains you and how little energy you have left for the people you love and the people in your family and others. And so you have to prioritize those other things because that's what gives you life and energy.
I love that. Northwest Arkansas has a way of getting into your soul. And what is it about this community that made you decide to stay? Because you were doing corporate some other
Mhm,
places, so you
mhm.
probably could have, when you left corporate, could have wandered about the countryside. But what
Yeah.
what made you stay here?
It's so the it's funny, I we moved here because of my job from Central Arkansas and never thought we would leave that area. My husband grew up in Little Rock, and when the opportunity came to move to Northwest Arkansas, we were excited about it, or I was excited about it. At the time, my son was in the 3rd grade and he cried and he cried, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, are we making the right decision?" And my husband, who's a big Razorback fan, said, "I'm only moving because I'll be closer to the Razorbacks." But we also moved in the middle of COVID. So,
Oh boy.
but I will say once we arrived, I mean, within a month, my son was running for his class president. We'd got him integrated into a baseball team really quickly. My husband was able to transfer his job, so that part was easy. And I think one of the things that really sticks out to us about the community is just honestly the sense of community. When we first lived here, I mean, when we first moved here, we were in Fayetteville, and my son asked, could he ride his bike to school? And I'm like, can you do what? I'm like, in Little Rock, like, kids did ride their bikes. And the fact that kids can just be kids and ride their bike and walk to
Mm.
school, I mean, when I tell people that story, they are just blown away because that's not the case in Little Rock and other areas within Arkansas and, of course, across the country. But I think just having that sense of community, safety, we probably take that for granted. And it's so funny just how connected, like, my different groups of people, so school, work, and sports with my son, it's like it's a small town almost, and so there's so many connections and just so much support. I have a great group of mom friends who, honestly, from the beginning when we moved here, who are just such a big support. Like, if I need my son picked up or if I'm in a bind and I need something, like, having a group of moms that you can just text at a moment's notice and they're like, "We got you." So I think
Mm.
there's just that sense of community and support. And when I made the decision to step away from corporate America and not really sure what my next steps were going to be, I called on a former colleague and said, "Hey, like, can I sit down and talk to you?" And within an hour, he'd made a note of like 15 to 20 people. He's like, "Let me connect you to these people."
Wow.
Um, and that's just something that I have not experienced in any other community I've lived in. Just the fact that people want to help you, they want to make those connections, and it's genuine, you know?
Mm.
So,
I love that. You bring up two thoughts related to community. Number one, I think Northwest Arkansas is a very special place when it comes to that connection. My experience in Central Arkansas is that connections are currency, and therefore people want to hold on to them because I got this connection. I'm going to hold on to this. And in Northwest Arkansas, we believe connections are currency. And if I connect you to others, then you benefit and you now feel like, oh, wow, I owe Angela something in the terms
right.
of connection and
Mm.
karma. And then that person that you guys connected and did well. And so we also think of it as currency, but in such a different way
Yeah.
of like the tide rises all boats. And it's such a beautiful, cool experience to be
Hmm.
up here and fun to talk to somebody that's seen it both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is that a few years ago, I was like talking about how important it was for me to have a group of people that I could count on.
Hmm.
And there was this day that I got that text that somebody needed you. And it wasn't very convenient for me that
Yeah.
day. And
Hmm.
I literally had to stop and think, well, if you want community, you have to be community.
Right.
And it's interesting because when you get in a group that thinks like you do, and they're like, "Oh, we're sharing resources of time, and yes, we'll pick up kids and everything," there is that beautiful synergy, and then I meet people that are like, "Oh, Northwest Arkansas, it's so cliquey, and I can't get into a group," and I'm like, "And if that's what you look for, that is what you will find."
Right. Yes.
And we have to sacrifice a little bit. We have to be sometimes inconvenient and,
Yeah.
and to really reach
Agree.
out.
Yeah.
What has been Go ahead.
Well, I've seen those comments, like, especially some of the mom chats or, like, group chats on social media about, "Oh, Northwest Arkansas is so clicky. How do you fit in?" And I think it's all about, kinda to your point, like, it's what you give is what you get,
Mhm.
and you have to be a friend to get a friend per se, and so I think if you have to be intentional in your connections and, I like what you said about connections is currency. I think it is, but there's also that collective currency if
Right.
if you think about it like that. And so, um, I think for people who kind of have those views of it being clicky, I just think they haven't one put themselves out there as a friend or as a resource. And it takes time to form those relationships too. And so if you aren't putting in the time to do that, I mean, people aren't just going to come knock on your door either and say, let's have coffee. So there's that.
Yeah, that's why I love that your organization is service being the
Hmm.
first step, right?
Hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
think that is what puts us in the path of people who also think like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
For
that.
sure.
So, if you are sitting in the room at the Women of All Generations on June 16th with women who've been building their careers since before you were born, what's one question you would want to ask them if you could ask anything?
I would say if there's one thing that you feel like you could have done differently in your career, looking back, what would it be?
Mhm.
I think I'm still young enough if there's something that I hadn't thought about that maybe I should be thinking about at this point. I'd love to learn from them, from women who are maybe at the end of their career. If
Mhm.
there's something they look back and either regret doing or an opportunity they regret taking advantage of, like I would love to know that from them.
That's awesome. Is there a woman in your life, and it doesn't have to be famous, just somebody that's real, whose career or life makes you think that's the kind of person I want to be someday?
That's a good question. I mean, there's so many women that I feel like I've looked up to like my entire career at different stages and not really picking out one particular person, but I think for me, a couple of things that I guess aspire to be. One is around service. I think I've said that in a couple different times, but my mom was big on giving back to her community, and I think that's was instilled into me early as a young girl. And I've tried to be intentional with that with my son because I think that just that guiding principle is just something I think that will just serve you well in life in whatever area. So, looking at women who have given their time back to their community. And I think also, when I was in college, my first job, I worked for a woman who she and I are still connected to this day. And I really loved how she would walk in a room and just take command, not in a cocky, arrogant way, but just she walked in the room and you knew she was in control. And that's something that I have tried to be intentional, as I have stepped into leadership roles at different stages of my life and service, leadership, taking control. Those are all great qualities. And then I'd probably say lastly is being that person you can lean on. You mentioned about having to give sometimes when it's not convenient. I think for me, I seem to always be the convener. So, like, if somebody has a family member that passes away, I'm like, how can we help that person?
Mm.
Or, even on our baseball team, we have a family that just recently joined us, and the mom is still in Texas, and the son is here with dad. And like, how can we make sure he's supported? So I think for me, like looking to be that support person for others, I've seen other women do that. And I'm like, I want to be that person as well. So I would say different women in my life have displayed those qualities, and I've picked those bits and pieces up along the way of things that I wanna emulate too.
I love that. That's beautiful. Interesting. You want to be the person of service, and look, you have been served well by your community.
Yes, yes,
It's funny how that
absolutely.
happens.
I know, yeah.
Okay, so ready for rapid fire questions. We ask
Sure,
these of everybody.
sure.
The the job you wanted at 10 years old.
I wanted to be a lawyer. From the time
Oh.
I was 10 till honestly, I was a senior in high school. Don't ask me why, but then I started college and went a whole different direction, so yeah.
Beach, mountains, city, or staycation?
Beach. I
I love
love
that.
listening to the water, being in the sun, and either listening or reading a book, so that's my ideal.
A bonus hits your account today. What's the first thing you do with it?
I'd say fund a nonprofit. I am involved in a couple of different organizations. One specifically is the Brooklyn Ray Foundation. It's a friend of mine whose daughter passed away from cancer, and we've been able to, over 7 years, donate more than $1 million to Arkansas Children's Cancer Research.
Wow.
So if I were to get a bonus, that would be my first donation. So,
Describe your work wardrobe in 3 words. Go.
I'd say casual, comfortable, and chic.
Love it.
Yeah.
The one goal you have not told anyone about yet, and are you ready to say it out loud?
Oh gosh. Um,
You can say, "No, I'm not ready to say it out loud."
well, that's what I'm gonna say. No, I'm not ready to say it loud. We'll go with that.
I love it. Shannon, this has been fantastic. What a treat for
Um,
me. I got to see you last year at the Women of All Generations. So it's super fun to get to sit down and have a few minutes to get to know you better.
awesome.
And thank you all for listening. Hope you will tune in next time for Her Story, brought to you by Chamber Fayetteville and the Be Freaking Awesome podcast.